It's time now for a look at what's happening around our town. Brought to you by Town Automotive Group.
It's 8 o'clock. Call Brown Chiari, injury attorneys ranked highest in ability and ethics.
Here's your Spectrum News in 90. The U.S. Supreme Court knocking down a century-old New York law which required residents to show proper cause to get a concealed carry handgun license. The vote was 6-3 with the majority opinion claiming the law conflicts with the Second Amendment. The ruling brought swift criticism from New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who called the decision reckless. Buffalo police releasing body camera footage of an officer-involved shooting on Plater Street that broke out last Friday. According to police, the suspect fired several rounds at officers during a pursuit. 2 BPD officers eventually shot at the suspect after a long chase. He is in stable condition. Officials say the officers who shot the suspect did everything by the book. The Erie County Department of Health will be providing COVID vaccines to kids ranging in age from 6 months old to 5 years old starting June 29th. The county has several vaccine clinics that will be offering these shots. To make an appointment, visit Erie County's website. Now it's time to get a check of your forecast.
It's been a gorgeous day around western New York, and we expect that nice weather to continue for the remainder of the evening. Now, as we get into the overnight, our temperature will drop down into the mid to upper 50s, depending on where you are. Humidity going to stay low, allowing for comfortable sleeping conditions. We couldn't ask for anything better, especially as we enter into the end of the work week. You'll notice Friday, our temperature tops out in the low 80s, and 90s are on the way for the weekend.
Given that most Americans want more gun control and not less, that this decision would make that harder seems just so unfair and frustrating.
They'll go over the state, they come in with the machine guns, with weapons, and could just go ahead and shoot it, come in and rob me, and nobody could say anything. Why can't I be legally having my own carry right away? As soon as I start, I will apply for it.
New Yorkers reacting to a major and historic Supreme Court ruling to strike down a more than century-old New York gun law. Good evening, I'm Camille DeLongis.
And I'm Marissa Jacks. Thanks so much for joining us as we begin coverage of the 6-3 ruling that's expected to allow more people to legally carry guns on the streets of the nation's largest cities.
Our Bobby Kuza details the decision and its potential impact on New York.
Since 1911, New York has required those applying for a concealed carry permit to demonstrate a special need for self-defense. On Thursday, the Supreme Court ruled that New York's so-called proper cause requirement violates the 14th Amendment by preventing law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their right to keep and bear arms in public. The 6-3 ruling broke along ideological lines, with the court's 3 liberal justices dissenting.
I'm sorry this dark day has come.
The decision was roundly condemned by New York's top elected officials, who said it would endanger the public by flooding the streets with handguns.
The insanity of the gun culture that has now possessed everyone all the way up to even to the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court opinion was silent on what constitutes a so-called sensitive location, places like subways or stadiums where states could still legally prohibit guns. Governor Kathy Hochul said New York would move quickly to define those restrictions and others. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said Thursday's decision will complicate the NYPD's efforts to seize illegal guns.
We cannot allow New York to become the Wild Wild West.
In a statement, President Biden said he was deeply disappointed and called on states to continue to pass gun safety laws and on Americans to make their voices heard, saying, quote, "This ruling contradicts both common sense and the Constitution and should deeply trouble us all. The decision will likely invalidate gun laws in a half-dozen other states, including California, Massachusetts, and Hawaii. It also comes in the wake of recent mass shootings, including one in Buffalo that Justice Samuel Alito actually used to argue for the ineffectiveness of gun laws, noting, quote, "The New York law at issue in this case obviously did not stop that perpetrator."
In New York City, nothing about the gun permitting process will change immediately, according to the mayor and NYPD officials, but it is expected the two upstate New York residents who brought this case after being denied concealed carry permits will soon be granted theirs. Bobby Kuza, Spectrum News.
Now, while many lawmakers are concerned about the implications this decision might have on public safety, others say it's a victory for the Second Amendment. Joining us now with more on that is Capitol Tonight Nick Reisman. Hi, Nick.
Hey there, Camille, and that's right. It was the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association that played a pretty key role in bringing this legal challenge to New York's concealed carry law all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. I spoke earlier in the day with Tom King, who called the legal victory here an important development for Second Amendment rights, not just in New York State, but around the country. At the same time, he also called the ruling an important step for public safety to make it easier for people to carry firearms outside of their home.
If criminals understand that more people have firearms and maybe carrying firearms, I think they're going to be less likely to attack them on the streets, attempt carjackings, attempt, break-ins at the home.
Democratic state lawmakers do expect to return to Albany in the coming weeks to take up legislation in response to the Supreme Court ruling. King says, however, he does expect there to be legal challenges to those measures as well. Camille?
And now, Nick, how long did it take to get to this point for the Rifle and Pistol Association?
Well, this legal challenge to New York's concealed carry law had actually been in the works for several years. It actually took 5 years in order to get to the U.S. Supreme Court. I asked King if he was surprised by this development with this legal victory. He says he wasn't necessarily surprised, but he had been hoping for this outcome.
All right, Capitol Tonight reporter Nick Reisman joining us. Thanks, Nick. As the U.S. Supreme Court struck down one New York state law, Governor Kathy Hochul was signing another relating to safety in schools. Hochul made Alyssa's law official this morning, requiring public school buildings be equipped with at least one panic alarm. Drafted before the Uvalde shooting, Alyssa's law is named for Alyssa Oladov, the 14-year-old who was killed in the 2018 school shooting in Parkland.
Now, during that bill signing, Governor Hochul also outlined an education campaign on the newly expanded red flag law. That includes a series of training for school boards, teachers, and other school professionals. It'll explain how and when to complete paperwork for extreme risk protection orders. Additional state leaders will have roundtables with law enforcement to detail new policies and procedures. And the state plans to make it easy for people to have any questions answered online. Now, this effort comes as the New York State Police Investigators Association calls for more legal support for red flag hearings. Our Olivia Leach explains the issue.
We are supporters of the red flag law. If someone's dangerous and they have a firearm and they're a threat to the community or to themselves, we want to know so we can try to stop them.
But Tim Diamond, the president of the New York State Police Investigators Association, says his members need more support. In May, Governor Kathy Hochul signed an executive order requiring state police to file all extreme risk protection orders, or red flag calls, and remove weapons from the homes of dangerous New Yorkers. And Diamond says the number of red flag cases has gone up recently. He says from January to June of 2022, the number of red flag cases has quadrupled from that same time period in 2021.
Since the last mass tragedy in Buffalo and then down in Texas, we have been overwhelmed with these ERPO requests. It's causing an increase in workload in the field for our members. It's causing a shortage of space to store all of the guns that we are seizing. And most importantly, when we go to an ERPO hearing in front of a Supreme Court judge, we are representing ourselves.
Within 3 days of removing firearms from a home, a Supreme Court judge will determine in a hearing whether or not those weapons can be returned to the individual. NYSPIA says the only problem is, while most respondents have an attorney, police investigators don't.
The state is not providing counsel, which is pretty concerning. Seeing that in the state of New York, a trooper can't represent themselves in a traffic ticket hearing, let alone in a hearing where we're determining whether or not someone should have their firearms.
The NYSPIA worries about what could happen if they lose one of those hearings.
Our fear is that our members are going to lose one of these hearings, and the guns are going to be returned to the subject in question, and they're going to go out and commit some heinous crime.
They're calling on New York's Attorney General to provide legal counsel for investigators. Acting Supreme Court Justice for Orange County, Craig Stephen Brown, wrote to the Attorney General's office about these concerns. The Attorney General responded saying, quote, "The OAG has determined that our office will not represent the NYSP in these proceedings."
We are not attorneys. We have some of the very best police officers in the country in the New York State Police Investigators Association, but they're not attorneys. It's not their skill set.
But Governor Hochul disagrees. She says 90% of ERPO orders brought by state police have been granted.
And I wanted this to go into effect immediately. I want it to be in effect, but there's training that's following. I just identified that there is going to be outreach to everybody in schools, a training program. Our state police are involved in this, as well as working out the issues related to representation in the courts.
There hasn't been action, and we're asking for action.
Olivia Leach, Spectrum News.
We reached out to the Attorney General's office and state police for comment, but have yet to receive a response.
The Senate is one step closer to passing a bipartisan gun violence bill. Today, the legislation crossed the 60-vote threshold needed to break a Republican filibuster. The final vote was 65 to 34. The new bill toughens background checks for young gun buyers, keeps guns from domestic violence offenders, and helps states put in place red flag laws. The bill still needs to pass a final approval vote in the Senate and then pass the House before it goes to the president's desk. Time now for a look at your weather on the One's forecast. Here's meteorologist Kelly Wendt.
Thank you for joining me for another Weather on the One's update. As we move through the rest of this evening, a really perfect night to get outside and enjoy all that Western New York has to offer. Our temperature toward 10 p.m. going to be dropping down into the upper 60s and low 70s. As we get into the overnight, you can leave the windows open because we drop down to a comfortable mid to upper 50-degree range. Now it's going to stay dry and comfortable with humidity levels very low, and it will stay that way for most of Friday. We get back into the low 80s toward the warmest part of the afternoon, and you'll notice our weather models having a hard time finding a cloud in the sky all day long. That is what we like to see to end out the work week. Now, as we get into the weekend, we do have some changes in store. Saturday going to be a picture-perfect day. We've got a ton of sunshine around and hot temperatures. Now, if you want some relief from these hot temperatures, you can head out to the beach, get out on the water where our lake and river temperatures remain in the mid-60s. But overall, a beautiful day. Saturday night into Sunday, we're looking at humidity increasing, clouds starting to fill in, and by Sunday afternoon, showers and a thunderstorm can't be ruled out. We'll talk more about that storm threat for you coming up in the 7-day forecast in just a bit.